Let's get back where we left off. After a while, the wagon and the cows passed a ranch that was being auctioned off. "What's going to happen to the cow who lived there?" Grace wondered. Maggie replied, "She'll be okay." "How do you know?" asked Grace. "You're looking at her," Maggie answered. Maggie explained that she used to have a family like the one at Patch of Heaven, until Alameda Slim stole all the cattle and left the ranch penniless. Night fell as the wagon neared the campsite. Cowboys sat around the blazing fire while thousands of cattle slept all around them. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out through the darkness. Before anyone knew what was happening, some cattle rustlers known as the Willie Brothers stormed the campsite. They knocked out the cowboys and tied them up. Moments later, Alameda Slim thundered in the riding of his huge buffalo named Junior. "Come on, girls," shouted Maggie. "Time to loose their ropes." Maggie and Mrs. Calloway freed themselves, but Grace became even more tangled. Then Maggie charged at Slim. Surprisingly, Slim whipped out his guitar and started to yodel. Maggie and Mrs. Calloway were spellbound by Slim's yodeling. Only tone-deaf Grace wasn't affected by the sound. "Maggie, Mrs. Calloway, snap up it," Grace pleaded. Grace tried to save them, but she was still tied to the wagon. When the wagon started rolling downhill, it bumped into Grace and tossed her onto the roof. Next, the wagon scooped up Maggie and Mrs. Calloway. Then Rico and Buck arrived on the scene, only to be sent flying by the out-of-control wagon. Meanwhile, Slim and the Willies escaped with the herd of cattle. On their own again, Maggie, Grace, and Mrs. Calloway were more determined than ever to catch Slim and the rustlers. They followed the tracks of the stolen cattle. "Who's better to catch a cattle thief than a cow?" reasoned Grace. Slim and the Willies were hiding in the deserted mine where they were taking the stolen cattle. Slim was bragging about how he had put most of the local farmers out of business. Then Slim ducked behind a screen and came back out in different clothes. "This here is the disguise I used to sneak into all the auctions and buy all the land," he said to the Willies with a grin. He told them how he even used a different name, Yodel. Slim looked at the map of areas and spotted a little farm he had never noticed before. "It's called Patch of Heaven, Uncle Slim," said Phil Willie. "It goes on to auction Thursday morning." Slim immediately made plans to go to the auction disguised as Yodel. "Every last sucker counts," he sneered as he banded the section of the map marked Patch of Heaven. Back at Patch of Heaven, things looked grim as the farm and the animals were about to be auctioned. Pearl worried about her cows. "I don't know what's worse, losing my farm to be highest bidder, or knowing my girls are lost and alone out there," she fretted. Out in the range, Maggie, Grace, and Mrs. Calloway had met Lucky Jack, a friendly peg-legged jackrabbit. They learned that Lucky Jack had a problem. "Until recently, I too had a home, Echo Mine," he told them sadly. "Some land-grabbing bandit moved into and flushed us out." Jack spotted a wanted poster of Slim and pointed it. "This is a low-down outlaw who robbed me and my beloved Echo Mine," he cried. "You mean this no-good varmint of hiding out in Echo Mine right now?" Maggie asked. "Without a doubt," responded Jack. They all agreed and go after Slim together. "We'll find bounty hunters. Now I've seen everything. Let's get moving, ladies, Jack suggested. When the group got to the mine, they were surprised to see Buck already there. Slim's buffalo, Junior, was refusing to let the horse in. Cows only, Junior growled. We got separated from the herd, Grace told Junior, so he let the cows and Jack enter. Once inside Slim's hideout, Maggie suggested a plan. You two get his attention while I sneak up behind him, said Maggie and the others. I'll knock him to the cart, and then we rope him up and wheel him to justice. The cows and Jack found Slim counting money. Slim had sold the stolen cattle to Mr. Wesley, a seedy city slicker. It was time for action. Mrs. Calloway and Grace tossed the criminal high into the air. Maggie caught him into a minecart, and then Lucky Jack quickly tied him to Slim with a rope. Let's get out of here, shouted Grace. Well, see you all in part 3.